We're lucky enough to have like a group or like a community that's actually backed this project from Anthem. And so one of the families said, "Oh, you guys can use our home to just have either a chill night or like record or something like that." So we've gone like 30 minutes up the coast to this like incredible space. We took the night off last night, which was cool. We kind of set up a studio this morning. Dana made fresh bread. It's amazing.
As you can see, where we're at now, it's pretty amazing. I think everyone's feeling pretty excited about working in here today. It's so unique. I've never done anything like this before. Because you're involving so many different voices and so many amazing different talents and stuff, you can't sort of squish it into a category.
The time span that we've had has been perfect. It's kind of strange, actually, because we all, initially thought that we were going to be coming out here and doing one song. It's been interesting because there are no boundaries. It's sort of like these songs don't really even have to sound like each other or like fit on the same thing. They just can kind of go wherever. And I think that's been one of the raddest things to see as far as the people go. I feel like we're capturing a little piece of everyone. And that's been a really cool thing, rather than kind of trying to tell everyone, fit into this mold.
Scared to let go, this one's on me. Just believe I'll say what I see when I see something in your maybe. Let me be a mirror, till you see it clearer. Baby, let me show you just how much I know you. Let me be a mirror, till you see it clearer.
Well, I think the pursuit of trying to do something new will always fall flat. Everything's been done before. The only thing that hasn't been done is yourself. We're all immensely vast beings that have a lot to contribute to the world and a lot to say. That's like the ultimate pursuit, is finding out what your soul wants to say. And that transcends style and everything else. It's easier to pursue what is popular, what is moving people now, what is cultural, because it's aesthetic. We can see it and taste it. We can look at it and hear it, and it's there in front of us. But the mystery of ourselves and what we really want to say, what we love, is way more darker, it's unknown, enigmatic, and strange. We tend to avoid that. That exploration is the only one that's gonna sustain you when it comes to a long career of any kind in the world of creation. So this project's probably been helpful in that.
I think once an artist gets to a certain place, there are those of them who kind of are willing to risk in those spaces, and I think we've seen that on a pop market for sure. I think the reality is songs are a place where we process emotion.
I think when you make it a career, and it becomes like your primary job, that tension is like real, because it's like the song has to do well. It's not just like I can write a song and if people like it, they like it. If people don't, they don't. I lent into that too much when I'm going, this has to work well on radio and everything, to the point where I forsake my own desires as a songwriter, as an artist, just to make sure this thing is like sounding good on radio or whatever. And now the thing I want the most is to make like good art.
It's a difficult tension in South Africa, because there's space to, like, overseas you can be more creative and there'll be like a market that will accept that. But here it's like, if you do anything different, it's like, oh.
So South Africa is a very diverse market. Our whole market would probably fit into one subculture in the States. We end up writing in South Africa towards a very niche market. So I know our rock genre, which now currently is like almost pretty much dead worldwide, but we would probably be like the smallest slice of a very small pie. You are an interesting case, in that you're a black guy in South Africa with a primarily white market. And it's not a racial thing. I look at it and I say, well, you've transcended boundaries.
It was just kind of like the music that I've always grown up listening to, you know what I mean? Like, I did listen to a lot of other music as well, like a lot of R&B and things like that back in the day, but the music that I kind of fell in love with was basically any music that at that stage that was driven by guitar. So when I was 13, I picked up the guitar and I started learning Jimi Hendrix songs. It's just music that I really connected with and that I felt I could actually play as a person. But obviously people see that and they're like, they see me with a guitar and they're like, you play jazz. Like automatically, I play pop folk. Yeah. Some people couldn't wrap their head around it in the beginning, so I think it was interesting for people to see that. But it also, like, for other black people that were doing it, they were like, fuck, this is Kiff, this other guy's doing it.
I mean, if you just think of the people that have enabled you, you know, there's definitely been so many people that you've looked at and you say, oh, well, I mean, if they can do it, I'm sure I can do it, you know. And I know you're a humble guy, so maybe you haven't thought about, oh, maybe I'm paving a way, but I think you'd be surprised to see how impacted a cultural unit can be just by, you know, following something within you that, you know, setting a little new path. Indian guys are some of the top musicians in South Africa. Really, I mean, it's not a strange thing to see an unbelievable, like, Indian bass player. Or, I mean, I don't know, you guys have got, like, music in your freaking genes. However, mainstream, not a huge show.
I think culturally, music isn't really seen as a career in the Indian culture.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, like, there are so many musicians that I know who are ridiculous, but they do that only at church.
So where does that stem from, dude? You know, is it like, it's a survival mechanism that you've got to study to get a doctorate of sorts to provide for the family? Is it because it's a heavy, because it's a very heavy family culture, which is amazing?
I think that there's just it's always been that perception that you have to get a job like that. You have to be a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant. And like the things that come with that are like security, you know?
Sure.
And security for yourself and your family. But I don't know, I think it's changing.
Really?
Yeah.
Great.
There's a lot of younger like Indian guys who are starting to play a lot more.
To be a white musician in a country like South Africa is a unique thing. White people playing pop rock in an African situation is a pretty odd thing. This country grooves now. So we're in a weird space because we go, how does the future look for people who want to play that music? They have less and less of an audience.
So for the longest time, I think I've been going through my own coconut issues. I feel I've grown up in such a Western society, and yet at the same time, also trying to grow up black. Because I honestly, like, so I'll send out some music and like my black friends will be like, wow, Nos, this is really white. And then like my white friends will be like, wow, I can just hear the ethnicity in it, you know? And I'm just like, this is so interesting. So it's more like also a social experiment as well. Like, not who will accept you and who will reject you, but like, okay, music communicates different things to different people.
As a young guy, to experience other culture, I experienced other cultural music. And in that space, one thing I really learned quickly is that in the space of like a church worship, that was the context, I very quickly realized how unspiritual white Western music is and how naturally spiritual the black community is around music and life.
In my family, like, music was always surrounded by something spiritual. It was never just singing for the sake of. If my mom was extremely sad, it would be a spiritual moment for her to open up her mouth and sing. And if we were happy, it would be a spiritual moment to then celebrate in song. Anything that was going on internally had to be expressed externally by a spiritual moment of opening your mouth or clapping your hands, or, you know, it was always followed by that. To express yourself wholly and fully, I felt, was just through music. You know, we had some family members that weren't believers, if you want to call it that. And, you know, reggae music was spiritual for them too. Wow. They were going through stuff. Bob Marley was playing loud, you know, like emancipate yourself, you know. I couldn't separate music from expression.
I kind of feel like when you're talking, like I feel like, almost like I've missed out to have that experience. I feel like to understand myself as a spiritual person as well, and to not have that part as my upbringing, it just sounds like it's so connected to your whole being, which is like such a precious thing. In that black culture, there's like this either groove, like house music is.
Yeah, it's the groove. Yeah.
It's repetitive,
Yeah.
and then it's like one-liner that's repetitive, almost like trance-like approach to music. Like they'll sing one chorus, but 30 times.
Because we're hoping the 30th time we'll get it. those 30 times are completely different every single time.
No, you have to explain that to me.
No, so you're singing at 30 times, so you're saying Ageko Njengo Jesu, Ageko Njengo Jesu, Ageko o Njengo Jesu. Our language is built on inflections.
Okay.
So you can say the same thing like 30 times, but you can say it in different ways. You know, so
You make me feel so bland.
no.
It's so amazing.
No, but it's just part of our, you know, it's part of our culture. So we can even have one word that if you put different inflections on that word, it's another thing. Yeah, it's just so you can say itanga, which means like pumpkin. You can say itanga, which means thigh. So those 30 times, I don't register it as 30 times.
Yes.
Because I'm saying it and I'm gonna say it in like different ways until it actually really sinks in. And then I can still say it 30 more times in like different ways. And oh, I like it when I say it like that. Oh, yeah. And then I move away from that because it's not the same.
My thing is like there's no boundaries in music. Like you should, whoever, it doesn't matter like who you are, you should be able to do a genre, any genre you want to, you know. The world is way smaller now due to the internet and things like that. But saying that, my biggest audience is probably Afrikaans people, dude.
I don't know that I have one day I woke up and I said, I need to make sure that the next generation gets to do it, you know?
Trying to do things differently, kind of that sacrificial, putting something back, and the scarp writing, and you know, how do you make a difference, and hopefully you can set a new precedent of not just what's in it for me, is constantly remind people about. I mean, pay it forward, that concept kind of started this mentoring thing up, and how would it look different given what we know about the complexity of the industry.
What I do know is that I had people that believed in me, case in point. I had people that gave me gear and paid for our first recordings, you know, which leaves a mark on you, you know, and I wonder if that's not part of why I'm interested in the next, in investing in people. I didn't have the industry invest in me. Everything else that I learned by watching. I would have loved it if an industry professional gave me an hour of their time. It would have meant the world to me, you know, and it would have changed the way I do everything. Every 2 weeks or so I get like a personal message saying, hey, would you mind grabbing a coffee? And I got no problem with that. Like the main question is, where do I start? I often start the conversation, so what do you do? What do you sound like? What do you want to do? And then I say, how many songs have you written? And they'll say to me, well, I think I've got nearly 4 now. And I have to politely say, well, like if you can't take yourself seriously, why do you expect me to take you seriously? They realize, oh geez, I've actually got to do some work to make this thing go forward. Everyone wants this like extravagantic, like dream-like, amazing life, but they don't realize that it does come at an unrealistic price. A price that you would think, no, that's a little bit too much. A lot of people are okay with being small. They just are. And I think the one thing that Gangs has done well, I think if we could pat our backs on anything, is that we've had a good work ethic. We've really crafted, before we got into stage, we practiced an entire year. We traveled through the night to get to shows and then play for 15 minutes or an hour and then get back into the car and drive. We spend money on gear. The work ethic's been that. And, you know, someone was saying to me the other day, they said, you know, often it's just the guys that make it are just the guys that are left. I feel like Gangs is such like a, you know, like the same way like high school is such a definitive part of your life actually. Like identity-wise, like you start to think about what you can do in the future. Like you have these blocks that are just like really like important blocks in your life. You know, I had high school, and then I had post-high school for 10 years, worked, and then we did Gangs, which was 7 years. And 7 years is enough time to really influence a lot of decisions, you know, on every level. So now coming to the end of what feels like a really, really definitive season, now is like, it's a weird space to be, like, because it defined where I thought the next season was going to go. It's hard to kind of get your head around what the next will kind of look like. I actually feel quite positive about it ending, because we've actually managed to be mates through the whole band career. Quite often that like the art gets, the artists get in the way of the art, and then you have conflict, and or you have a bad industry relationship, or, you know, bits and pieces happen, but
hasn't ended for the wrong reasons.
Hasn't at all. It's actually ended because we've got other stuff going on that's like we're developing as people. And I just think like, you know, the person you are on January 1st to the person you are at December 31st. A year of living, you aren't the same person, and that's just 1 year. It gets bigger when you 7 years down the line. You've just grown as different people, and we're just doing different things, different extensions of ourselves. The only time I feel real emotion is in nostalgic sense, you know, and like you stop and then I started going through like the old videos and the photos, and I looked at I watched the first show, we've got a video of it, and I just sat and watched myself for a full set, because I was just like, I was replaying the sensation of that first date feeling, you know, like ultimate like insecurities, people gonna love it or not gonna love it, and then I was actually remembering that first energy, like it really was like quite a real.
What was the first gig? I'm trying to think.
We played on the 6th of April 2011, which was at Unit 11. This like crummy.
What an amazing place, eh?
Yeah, it was just like a hole in the wall with horrendous sound and the most vibe you've ever seen. The perfect place to start a band, because everyone that came there was there to have a party. There wasn't enough space for the amount of people that were there. So it was just like this heaving mess. It was so great. And so we've got very fond memories about our first show, and our second show was there. It was the beginning and then the breakthrough, and then seeing photos of we had success, and then you can see the shows getting bigger. It's the merch and the designs of your first album. I don't know, it's just the nostalgia of all that process. It's interesting now with how the music industry has changed now, right? You can do it all yourself. Okay, that's the beauty. There is a frustration in me that really talented guys don't get to see the light of day. Partly it's them, but a lot of it's just accessibility to industry and know-how, those kinds of things. Sam Berger says to me, you know, before social, no one would have heard my songs in Australia or the UK. But now, I just put it out there and automatically, it's as part of the upload process is that we send it to the world. So now you've got these amazing distribution platforms, which is replaced a record industry on one level, because you're not using physical copies anymore, right? And they had all these systems and mechanisms to get into stores. That was the only way you could get it. The music creation has become easier because you can do it on a laptop for the most part. I've got a studio set in my home that's cost me very little cash that I can process and write all this stuff. There's still a need for a human element though. And I see a lot of these young guys, that's where it actually becomes unstuck, because they've created it at their house. They have put it on the platforms, but it's done nothing. The actual value left in the industry is human network. It's actually the last unreplaceable.
The people that struggle a little bit more, they seem to want it a little bit more too, than the people that are better. A really good vocalist can throw something out there and you're like, I mean, that's just like perfect. Yeah. And it's missing something.
I said to Nossi that there's, it's so interesting that we've put all these people in, right? They all got chosen to be a part of the project because of relationship, essentially. Ability, but also relationship. And not little relationships, like substantial relationships, but as everyone's come into the space and you know that this one knows that one is connected at some level, but you learn just how deep that connection is. I realize every day actually, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm actually way more tied to these people on every level than I perhaps actually really knew.
Getting all those really talented people, you know, to find a spot for them has been quite a nice challenge, if I'm honest.
These natural little breakaways have happened, and these little micro conversations have just evolved. I think they're just hoping for something fruitful to come out of the next conversation. These plans being made and numbers being swapped and commitments and looking ahead of when they can do stuff together. That's the exciting part.
This kind of project, like, I get to be a part of because of you and because of relationships and things we've done. And it's this constant reminder of, like, at the end of the day, it's about people and it's about who you meet and who you get to know. And so I'm standing in the room this morning with people I have known for years, people I just met, people I've heard of for years, like a John Ellis who I've listened to. I think I probably still have all my Tree 63 like CDs tucked somewhere away.
So crazy. So someone's words will impact your life and they'll be like John Ellis and they'll be like, what? And you just go, But these people have no idea. They have no idea how they've impacted our lives and like inspired us to want to be storytellers.
And you have these moments where all your paths cross, and I think not only is it exciting to be in the room in those moments, but it's exciting to think about in 10 years time, in 15 years time, the thought of like, I'm sitting with Sam, you know, and he's kind of just at the beginning of his career and full of questions and ideas, and he's got this energy about him, and I'm thinking like, our paths are gonna cross again in a few years. And if you think about it in terms of what can I get out of this, you can short circuit so much of what is possible.
Yeah, and Andrew's such an interesting case because it plays out like a movie. I discovered him at a high school musical. I went there with my wife and this kid comes onto stage and he's just like so much better than everyone else. I'm like, who's this kid? You know, and I meet him and I wasn't looking to manage anyone, but I did certainly had this mentorship idea in the back of my head. I actually met him so that I could meet his dad. I just wanted to make sure that this talent at least had parents that was going to back him. What it did was that it started a process of saying, well, you know, if I was involved, what would I do? What is a fair contract? Picking your brain for hours, chatting to other businessmen and trying to structure a contract that empowers a 16-year-old kid to own his own company. That's the game changer. From the big things like contracts to the small things where he would say like, hey Brad, we've made merch, whatever, and he'd say, hey, can I give this merch away? And I would say to him, I would say, Andrew, do you know what? It's not my merch, it's your merch, dude. You make the call on what you can do with that merch. You're gonna understand that you've paid for this merch and this is what it costs. Because when I'm out of the picture, you need to own that company 100%. My natural inclination was like, okay, well, maybe I should be starting a record label. A record label is fantastic to start a band. But once you're established, it's really unweighted. I find it's an injustice that artists don't get to live off their craft. You and I share that. And I also find it strange that an artist, if he buys into the industry, he's never allowed to own his craft. The labels get involved and they take ownership of their art. And for me, that was just like, I don't know that I love that. And you can see that's where this independent spirit has been birthed through technology, etc., etc. So I started to say, well, actually, I don't want that. I'm not going to do it to him. And you move away from exploiting the artist to empowering.
The arts industry will always survive, but you know, how much do we lose in the process because there hasn't been enough spoken around doing things differently?
Surely we have these thoughts that go like, is what we're doing important? I just think how many other stories that so many artists never ever will ever hear. It's like water, music gets into everything. You can't actually it's really hard to, if you just pour water in there, it's like really hard to hurt it, but it just seems like it's got that
right.
It just gets into the strangest places.
And it has a life beyond you, which I think is really good and should be really humbling. You create something, but what happens after and how it affects people is beyond your control. Yeah. And that's kind of awesome. You made a choice to be honest and write something that was true.
Yeah.
And then something beautiful happened that you could never have controlled, that you could never have orchestrated, which is why it's worth fighting for the best version, the best that can be put out there. Sometimes the best of that song is kick ass. Sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
But that's the best it could be, and you worked damn hard to get it there, and then it's like, it's an okay song. It's not the best thing I've ever done, but I know I worked hard and I know I got it to as far as I could.
The goal of this thing was the collaboration beyond just this moment. It's going to be interesting to look back.
Yeah, this project's been an exercise, I think, for everybody, just going with what the collective is, where the collective is steering, Yeah. It's been amazing, man. And I think we were just talking about doing it again someplace else.